How did America become the land of the free? How did we become so fortunate that a large percentage of the world's population wishes that they could live here? What is the origin of the freedoms that we enjoy and have made us so prosperous? If we forget the origin or where our freedoms come from, we may lose them. Do you know where our freedoms come from? Stay tuned, we'll see.
Welcome to Steps to Life with Dr. John Grossbaugh.
Sabbath rest is a promise between God and His children.
Bible prophecy tells us that we are living in the last days of this earth's history before Jesus' second coming. Today's program will help you prepare for these coming events. Stay tuned.
Before we look at the origin of the freedoms that we enjoy in America that have made us the land of the free, let's pray and ask the Lord to help us understand what we're going to study from His holy book. Father in heaven, we thank You for the freedom that is enjoined in Your word, and we thank You for Your promise that wherever Your Spirit is, that there is liberty. And we pray that You'll help us to understand the truth about where liberty comes from and how to be truly free in spirit. We pray this in Jesus' name and for His sake. Amen.
Many people today are living a lawless life. Bold robberies and murders fill the newspapers and TV news daily. People know that these things break the laws of the land, but how many people understand all they should about God's law? How much do you understand? Today's free book is entitled, Does God's Grace Blot Out the Law? To receive your free copy, call 1-800-THE-TRUTH and ask for offer GC30. And now, Pastor John Grossbaugh.
In the 16th and the 17th century in England, there were many people, whole groups of people who wanted to return, who wanted to go back to the purity and the simplicity that characterized the early Christian church in the time of the apostles. As they looked around, they regarded many of the established customs of the English church or the Church of England as being simply monuments of idolatry. And so they could not, with a clear conscience, unite in the worship of the Church of England. But there was a problem. The Church of England was supported by the civil authority, by the king, the state, and the Church of England would not tolerate any dissent from her forms. Not only that, but attendance at church was required by law, and unauthorized assemblies for worship were prohibited. And if you disregarded the prohibition, you could not only land yourself in prison, or you could be exiled or even killed. And at the beginning, the opening of the 17th century, a monarch had just ascended the throne of England who made the following determination. He said, "We are going to make the Puritans to conform. And either they're going to conform or we're going to harry them out of the land, or worse." Well, what was the result? Well, these people were hunted, they were persecuted, they were imprisoned, and as they saw the attitude of the government, they didn't see that there was any hope, any promise of anything better happening in the future. And so they said, England is becoming a place that is not even habitable for a person who wants freedom of conscience as does not believe the same as the Church of England. So some of these Puritans decided that they were going to leave England and they were going to flee to a place not very far away where there was freedom of worship. They were going to go to the Republic of Holland. So they had a lot of difficulties after they made this decision. They had losses. Some were imprisoned. They were betrayed into the hands of their enemies. But because they steadfastly persevered, they finally conquered and they finally found shelter on the friendly shores of the Dutch Republic. Now, in their flight, they had left their homes, they had left their goods, they had left their means of a livelihood, and they were strangers in a strange land where people spoke a different language and had different customs, and they were forced to resort to new ways to make a livelihood. People that were men that were middle-aged had to learn new trades, new ways to earn a living. But they cheerfully accepted that situation, and they found their joy in being able to worship God according to the dictates of their conscience. They knew that they were pilgrims, and they looked toward heaven and praised the Lord that they were able now to worship according to their conscience. They were in exile, but their hardship and love of the truth had caused them to trust in God's promises and to know that God would not fail them in their time of need. And so, these people whom God had permitted to suffer many persecutions and trials till they had been brought low, they came to the place where their religious experience was strong and fervent. It is an interesting thing that in spite of the wrath of Satan and the plots of evil men, persecution and exile were actually used by God to open the way to freedom so that people could understand the importance of freedom. When they had separated from the English church, the Puritans had come together and they had made a covenant with each other. Here's the covenant that they made. They said, "We are joining ourselves together by a solemn covenant as the Lord's free people to walk together in all His ways, made known or to be made known to us." Well, they were in Holland now, and they eventually made the decision that it would be best for them to emigrate, to come to the New World. They decided that they would depart from Holland and they would go to a new world. These were called the Pilgrims. We call them still today the Pilgrims or the Puritans. And before they left, they had a very godly pastor, and he made a closing address to them before they left. And here are a few of the things that he said to them in this closing address before they were going to leave Holland by boat and come to the shores of what we now call the United States or America. He said, their pastor, "Brethren, we are now ere long to part asunder, and the Lord knows whether I shall live ever to see your faces more. But whether the Lord hath appointed it or not, I charge you before God and His blessed angels to follow me no farther than I have followed Christ. If God should reveal anything to you by any other instrument of His, be as ready to receive it as ever you were to receive any truth of my ministry. For I am very confident the Lord has more truth and light yet to break forth out of His holy word. For my part, I cannot sufficiently bewail the condition of the Reformed churches, who are come to a period in religion and will at present go no farther than the instruments of their Reformation. For example, the Lutherans cannot be drawn to go beyond what Luther saw. The Calvinists, you see, stick fast where they were left by that great man of God, who yet saw not all things. This is a mystery much to be lamented, for though they were burning and shining lights in their time, yet they penetrated not into the whole counsel of God, but were they now living, would be as willing to embrace further light as that which they first received." And then he exhorted them to remember their church covenant, their promise to each other that they were going to walk in all the ways of the Lord, known to them or revealed to them in the future. He said, new truth is going to be revealed because, he said, it is not possible that the Christian world should come so lately out of such thick anti-Christian darkness and that full perfection of knowledge should break forth at once. And so they left Holland on the ship. Why? Because they wanted to be in a place where they could be assured that they would always have freedom of conscience. That was the reason they left. They endured the perils of a long journey across the sea. They endured the hardships and the perils of the wilderness. And they came to lay on the shores of America the foundation of a mighty nation. However, these pilgrims did not yet understand the great principle of religious liberty. Now, they had sacrificed everything in order to obtain liberty for themselves, but they were not ready to grant the same liberty to others. You see, there were very few, even of the most advanced thinkers in the 17th century, there were very few people who understood, had any concept of the grand principle that is an outgrowth, actually, of the New Testament, that acknowledges God as the sole judge of the human conscience in matters of faith. The doctrine that God had committed to the church the right to control the conscience, to define and to punish heresy, had been taught for so many hundred years that it took time for people to comprehend that you didn't have to have a state or a church in order to teach people how to worship God. The darkness of ages had not been fully dissipated. And so when they came to America, interestingly, even though they had sacrificed everything in order to gain freedom of conscience for themselves, when they came here, as soon as they came to the shores of America, they started making regulations. Well, what regulations did they make? Well, they made a regulation that only church members could have a voice in the civil government. So if you weren't a church member, you couldn't have any part in the government. You couldn't have any office or rulership or be a ruler of, you could not have any function or office in the government if you were not a church member. That was one of the rules they made. So they made sort of a state church among themselves in which all the people were required to contribute to the support of the clergy. And not only that, not only was everybody required by law, by their law, to support the clergy, but also the magistrates, that is the civil power, was authorized to suppress heresy. So the secular power was in the hands of the church. And what was the result? Well, the same result as has always happened. The inevitable result is persecution of somebody that doesn't believe the same as those in power. 11 years went by. This was the way they were governing themselves. You had to be a church member to have a part in the government. You had to support the clergy. It was required by law. And the magistrate could define and punish heresy. A man came, a famous man today, wasn't so famous back then. A man came to live among them by the name of Roger Williams. Now, he came there for the same reason that the others had come there. He wanted to enjoy religious freedom. But he saw something that other people at that time didn't see yet. He saw that this religious freedom was an inalienable right of all, whatever might be their creed. He was an earnest seeker for truth. He was probably the first person to introduce into modern Christendom the idea that the civil government should allow liberty of conscience and the equality of opinions before the law. He said that it was the duty of the magistrate to restrain crime, but never to control the conscience. He said the public or the magistrates may decide what is due from man to man. But when they attempt to prescribe a man's duties to God, they are out of place. And there can be no safety. Why can there be no safety? Roger Williams explained why there could be no safety. if men try to prescribe another man's duty to God. Because, he says, it is clear that if the magistrate has that power, he may decree one set of opinions or beliefs today, and he may decree another set of opinions or beliefs tomorrow, as has already been done in England by different kings and queens. Not only was it done in England, it was done all over the European continent by different popes and councils in the Roman Church for hundreds of years. And so, belief could become a matter of confusion. You can see that problem going all the way back to Constantine. And so Roger Williams was not in harmony with this statute of English law. Well, what happened? He said, you're going to maintain worship against the person's consent. So you'll have a lot of people coming to church, not because they choose to come to church to worship God, but because they're required to do so by the law. So what are you going to have? You're going to have a church that could be half full or more than half full of hypocrites. He was asked by his antagonists, they said, is not the laborer worthy of his hire? He replied, yes, he is, by those that hired him. Now, Roger Williams was respected and loved as a faithful minister, a man of rare gifts, but his teachings about religious liberty were so hated by the people of his time that actually, right during the wintertime, he was banished and he was forced to leave the colonies. To avoid arrest, he was forced to flee amid the cold and storms of winter. But Roger Williams persevered, and it was what Roger Williams did that eventually resulted in a document called the Bill of Rights that we attach to our Constitution. Stay tuned, we'll see what Roger Williams did for the United States.
Sometimes studying the Bible on your own, without any help or guideline to follow, can be a little difficult. And after confusion and frustration set in, we all too often turn to other things. If this sounds like you, you're not alone. The Steps to Life Bible Correspondence School is just the answer. Call 1-800-THE-TRUTH and ask for your free Bible Correspondence Starter Pack.
I really enjoyed being able to study at home. I'm a new Christian, and I definitely knew I needed some guidance.
Simply review each lesson and answer the questions.
These studies were great. It just seemed like the Bible opened up for me.
Then send the completed lesson back to us in the envelope provided.
These studies were very professional. They didn't take a lot of time, and I really appreciated that.
A Bible teacher will then look over each lesson and send them back to you with the next set of studies. It's that simple and totally free. Call Steps to Life Television at 1-800-THE-TRUTH.
I'm so glad I called.
Welcome back. Roger Williams wandered in the wilderness in the middle of the winter with no protection, no shelter for about 14 weeks. He says how that a hollow tree sometimes served him for shelter. So he was destitute, but he continued on his painful flight through the terrible snow and the trackless forest until finally he found refuge with an Indian tribe whose confidence and affection that he had won earlier while endeavoring to teach them the truths of the gospel. He made his way at last, after months of change and wandering, to the shores of Narragansett Bay. And there he laid the foundation for the first state of modern times that in the fullest sense recognized the right of religious freedom. The fundamental principle of Roger Williams' colony was this: every man should have the liberty to worship God according to the light of his own conscience. That was the principle. Every man should have the right to worship God according to the light of his own conscience. Well, his little state, called Rhode Island, became an asylum for people that were oppressed. And it increased and it prospered until its foundation principles, civil and religious liberty, became the cornerstones of the American Republic. In that grand old document, which our fathers set forth as their Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, they declared this, quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," unquote. The Constitution of the United States, in the most explicit terms, guarantees that a man's conscience is not to be violated by the state. Notice what it says, quote, "No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or of public trust under the United States," unquote. And here's another quote, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." Where did they get those ideas? Oh, friend, it came from people who had been persecuted. The persecution had gone on for hundreds of years. People were wanting to serve God according to exactly what was written in the Bible. They fled from England. Finally, they left Holland. They came to this country. They still didn't understand the truth about the right that a human being has to worship God according to his own understanding, his own reason, his own conscience. The framers of the Constitution recognized that there is an eternal principle, that man's relation to God is above human legislation, and that his rights of conscience are inalienable. They cannot be violated justly. So reasoning, they said, is not necessary to establish this truth, because we are conscious of it in our own bosoms. It is this consciousness, they said, which in defiance of human laws has sustained so many martyrs in tortures and flames. How? They felt, they knew that their duty to God was superior to any human enactment. They knew that man could exercise no authority over their consciences. It is an inborn principle which nothing can eradicate. The tidings spread over Europe and the rest of the world that there was a land where a man might go and enjoy the fruit of his labor and obey the dictates of his own conscience, the convictions of his own conscience. And when that news spread all over the world, thousands flocked to the shores of the New World, and the colonies rapidly multiplied. Massachusetts, by a special law, offered free welcome and aid at public cost to Christians of any nationality who might fly beyond the Atlantic to escape from wars or famines or oppression of their persecutors. So the fugitive, those that were downtrodden by the state or by the church in some other land, were made guests in the United States. In fact, in just a few years, there were thousands and thousands of people for these reasons that had flocked to the shores of this country. What was the object that they sought? Oh, they were content just to earn a bare subsistence by a life of frugality and toil in order that they might have freedom to worship God according to their own conscience. The Bible was held as the foundation of faith, the source of wisdom, and the charter of liberty, and its principles were diligently taught in the home, the school, and the church. Well, the result was you could travel in one of the Puritan colonies. You could go for years and never see a drunkard or hear an oath or meet a beggar. It transformed the the principles of the Bible transformed society. But still there were those that wanted to unite the state with the church. Even though it had produced evil results so many times, all the days from the days of Constantine up until that time, there were those who wanted to use the secular power to build up the church. But Jesus said in John 18:36, we should always remember His words. He said, "My kingdom is not of this world." When you unite the church and the state, be the degree ever so slight, it may appear to bring the world closer to the church, but what actually happens is it brings the church nearer to the world. Truth is progressive. That's what these people believed. But did you know, friends, that the final conflict to come upon the world, the final struggle, the final battle that will engulf the whole world has to do with these very issues that these people were struggling over? The issue, does a man have a right to worship God according to the dictates of his own conscience? Or does the state and the church have a right to dictate how you shall worship? Did you know that there is going to be an attempt to dictate again worldwide exactly how you shall worship? And the principles that our forefathers fought for are going to be repudiated. The Bible predicts that. People in the United States have said, oh, that could never happen. But the Bible says it will happen. It's a dangerous thing, friend, to argue with Bible prophecy. Here's what the Bible says is going to happen as we approach the end of the world. It says a time is coming when He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Notice, there's going to be a law dictating how you shall worship. That's the very thing that the forefathers in the United States said that's never to happen. But it's going to happen according to Bible prophecy. It says, He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell, except one who has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. That's what's going to happen at the end of the world. And the Bible predicts the outcome of which side you are on of this battle. Are you going to be keeping the commandments, or are you going to be breaking the second commandment and worshiping the image of the beast? Everybody's going to be on one side or the other of this final battle. The question is, friends, which side are you going to be on? The side that you're on, whether you keep all the commandments of God or whether you break the commandments by worshiping the beast in His image, will determine your eternal destiny.
Many people today are living a lawless life. Bold robberies and murders fill the newspapers and evening news on a daily basis. Most people know that these things break the law of the land, but how many people understand all they should about God's law? Today's free book is entitled, Does God's Grace Blot Out the Law? To receive your free copy, call 1-800-THE-TRUTH and ask for offer GC30. Many people today believe that because of God's grace, we no longer have to keep God's law. But is this true? How can you know for sure? There are many theories on this subject, but what does God's Word have to say on the subject? Today's free book is entitled, Does God's Grace Blot Out the Law? To receive your free copy, simply call 1-800-THE-TRUTH. That's 1-800-843-8788 and ask for offer GC30. Call now. Get your copy of Does God's Grace Blot Out the Law? And find out the truth from God's Word on this very important topic.
We hope that this sermon has been a blessing to you. We would love to hear from you. Our mailing address is Steps to Life, P.O. Box 782-828, Wichita, Kansas 67278. You may call us at 1-800-THE-TRUTH. That's 1-800-843-8788. Our email address is historic@stepstolife.org, and our web address is www.stepstolife.org. May God be with you as you seek to walk the narrow way.